On behalf of Wheaton College, I want to welcome you all to the plenary address of our 2009 Symposium on Human Needs and Global Resources. This symposium was endowed through a generous grant from the John Deere Foundation with the express purpose to advance the critical thinking needed to address challenges related to global poverty and hunger. Since the first symposium in 2006, the symposium has been a forum for faculty and students to engage in strategic thinking about the theoretical and practical challenges of global economic, social, and political development relating to world hunger, food production, agriculture, water resources, urbanization, environment, health, and conflict. Among the participants joining us this evening are alumni and current interns of the Hunger Program, Wheaton College faculty, staff, and students, members of the Wheaton community, and others who have supported the Hunger Program in various ways throughout the years. We want to welcome all of you and thank you for your wonderful support of the Hunger Program and your presence with us. We're especially delighted this evening to welcome our guests from the Luke Society, with whom Wheaton College has been partnering through the Hunger Program for almost 20 years. Luke Society hosted their first Hunger intern in 1990, and 18 years later, a total of 47 Hunger interns have been welcomed by Luke Society medical staff around the world, serving with the organization's various health and community development projects and learning important lessons in uniting life and vocation with faithful Christian service. In the words of the Luke Society's own website, here is what the Luke Society is about. The Luke Society, quote, is an interdenominational organization of Christian health and business professionals dedicated to medical missions. We support indigenous Christian health professionals who have a vision to reach their own people. Our focus is on community health, teaching people how to prevent disease and equipping people to care for themselves, their families, and their communities. Besides teaching prevention, we also provide medical care for the sick and comfort for the dying. When appropriate, we help to initiate economic development projects to assist people in providing for their families. And the Luke Society's introduction closes, most important, ours is a Christ-centered ministry of evangelism and discipleship, reconciling man to God and man to man through the truth of the gospel. I'm not sure I've ever heard a more winsome and balanced statement of holistic development and ministry, one that's wholly compatible with the heart and mission of Wheaton College. We're grateful for the willingness of the representatives of the Luke Society to be with us tonight. As an institution, Wheaton College is committed to global partnership. Our partnership with the John Deere Endowment has, through the Hunger Symposium, provided us with the opportunity to hear voices from around the world already doing well what we aspire to equip our students to do. As the Luke Society has so graciously hosted Wheaton College students, we now have the privilege of hosting them and to receive instruction and encouragement from them this weekend. I'd like to ask the Lord's presence and blessing on this evening, after which we will welcome John Bussell, who's the Manager of Strategic Philanthropy at the John Deere Foundation, to introduce tonight's plenary speaker. So would you join me in prayer? Lord, we're grateful for all of your good gifts. Thank you for the gift tonight of wisdom, encouragement, and exhortation. We anticipate from the words that we shared with us tonight that you will teach us, dear God, how to love more truly and love more deeply, how to love more purely, how to love more effectively your children around the world. And so be with us tonight, dear God, and help us to receive your instruction as you intend. In your Son's holy name, amen. Please welcome John Bussell.
I think the sign of a really strong symposium is when the people who have spoken before you are so good that as you look at what you've kind of put down to capture, you think, this isn't very good and it's not very much. But today what people have talked about has really captured the essence of why John Deere is involved with this partnership. We've had a pleasure now for 4 years to be here, and in that time I have met a lot of young people, and that's been a real enjoyable feature for me because I enjoy working with younger people. But in the course of that, I've also come to realize that a lot of young people don't really know much about John Deere. And maybe why did John Deere come to this point to start working with Wheaton? So if you'll bear with me, I want to give you a little bit of background about the company. People may not know that John Deere was a man, actually was a guy named John Deere, that created a development tool. He was a blacksmith, and in 1837, he created a forging process to make a new blade, steel blade for a plow that revolutionized farming. And it helped people, especially in the Midwest, move from just growing enough food to feed themselves to growing food that could feed other people. So it moved from subsistence farming, as the U.S. knew it at that time, to commercial farming. We've been around since 1837. We're now one of the very oldest companies in the United States and the oldest manufacturer in the U.S. We make a lot of different products, a lot of different solutions, primarily in agriculture, which people may be more familiar with, but we also manufacture products for construction purposes, which is also part of developing world needs, for consumer needs. We make engines. We are also in different energy fields. We have just started a wind energy, alternative energy business. We are in the irrigation field. We also have financial services and credit. John Deere has more than 50,000 employees. That number changes periodically, but we have 50,000 employees around that and working in 27 different countries around the world. And we sell product in 130 countries around the world. We're headquartered in Moline, Illinois, which is about 3 hours from here on the Mississippi River. John Deere started his business in what is still a very remote little village called Grand Detour, Illinois. He ended up there because he was a blacksmith kind of trying to find a future and somehow got stuck there and was able to open up a blacksmith shop. And that's really how we got started. He moved to the Quad Cities area, that's part where Moline is, because of river transportation, because of energy that you could harness from the water through mills. Okay, that's a little bit about the business of John Deere, but I think because you're here, you might be interested in something a little bit more about the company. And that's the character of Wheaton's partner here. What are we about? What's the background of Deere? So I want to talk for just a second about what we call our core values, things that were embodied by John Deere himself, who was a highly principled man with integrity and an interest in the welfare of others, which is demonstrated by his reputation as a prominent abolitionist during the period of the Civil War. He was a community activist. He was a believer and supporter of education for the poor and the masses at a point in time when that was not available to most people. In the course of setting up this company, he instilled 4 values that we still operate by today, which are our core values, the first of which is integrity. And as we define that, it means telling the truth, keeping our word, and treating others with fairness and respect. A lot of the young people here today, I have children who are your age in college, and they're looking at their futures and saying, this last year has been a real eye-opener. What does this all mean? And there's some unpleasant things in the paper about business world. Well, I'm here to tell you that we feel very confident at Deere about what we strive to do from the perspective of integrity, honesty, and ethics. Another of our core values is quality, and that means delivering value that customers, employees, and shareholders and others expect. We are a publicly held company. Our owners are shareholders. Innovation is key, inventing and designing and developing breakthrough products and services. Commitment is our final core value, and that's doing our best to meet expectations. A lot of companies have values, and it's easy for somebody to say, well, these are our core values. But it's how those values are put into action that really define an employer or a company or an entity. And I think it's best summed up by our chairman and chief executive officer, Bob Lane, who is a Wheaton alum, by the way. He consistently reminds us that it's not just what we do and what we accomplish as a company that matters. Rather, it's how we do it that is as important as the accomplishments we achieve. As a company, we just demonstrate the phrase we call the how in every area, from our environmental stewardship to our human resources practices that respect the dignity and safety of employees, from product design that emphasizes customer safety and productivity, and to corporate citizenship, just to name a few. Well, I'm with the John Deere Foundation, philanthropy, corporate giving, returning back in a different way. Our philanthropy also reflects the how. Giving away money is actually pretty easy. One of the questioners in an earlier session pointed out that research shows that in past decades, over $3 trillion has been donated to help the developing world, yet impacts have not been achieved. Giving money can be easy. Giving it right, doing something that makes a lasting positive difference for humanity, is a challenge. It's one I'm lucky to have. It's very rewarding and very pleasurable. So for us, in our philanthropic pursuits, the how is not just a process, but it's a reflection of the caliber of the organizations we work with and the objectives and impacts of the programs we support. That's why we're proud to support this symposium. That's why we're proud of our affiliation here with Wheaton College. In 2004, the John Deere Foundation Board of Directors, the group I'm with, approved a new strategy. Part of it was to develop a philanthropic commitment we call Solutions for World Hunger. The overarching objective is to help eliminate the problems that cause chronic hunger around the world. We do this by developing focused alliances with organizations engaged in sustainable agricultural development initiatives that overcome hunger. There's tie-in points through all of this, but I want to point out something for those of you who are at chapel today. You might remember that Dr. Boateng talked about the holistic approach, the 4 prongs that make up the holistic approach, one of which was development. That's where we fit in. That income generation, community development prong, that's what we work to do with several of our collaborations. The fit with Wheaton, again going back to 2004, helped us to develop this plan. And over the past 4 years, we've developed strong friendships and affiliations here. From this, we learn. We learn about those other prongs. We learn about the holistic approach and how we can all work together to achieve a common aim. And it's something that, on behalf of Deere, I'm very proud to talk about. But if you talk to our workforce, they're very proud, too, of all of these affiliations. Community-based health services is one of those prongs. And that is what our plenary speaker tonight, Dr. Apolos Landa, will address. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce him. Dr. Landa serves as Luke Society's regional coordinator for South America, a post he has held since 1996. He was previously the director of the Luke Society Clinic in Moyobamba, Peru, from 1990 to 1997. Under his direction, that clinic ran outpatient care, diagnostic services, a pharmacy, and corrective surgery for children born with cleft palates. The clinic also carried out several community health projects, including the training of community health promoters, agriculture training for rural farmers, and the constructions of wells and latrines. In addition to his work with Luke Society, Dr. Landa has served on the board of several religious and development organizations, including the Bible League, World Vision International in Peru, the Reformed Association of Higher Education of Alto Mayo, and the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Peru, of which he has also served as vice president. He is active in the Reformed Presbyterian Congregation in Moyobamba, is an ordained presbyter, and recently completed a Master's of Theology from Free Church College, Glasgow University in Scotland. Dr. Landa's passion in public health developed during his early years as a medical doctor. He received his MD from the Peruvian National University Federico Real. I don't have much Spanish background, so I hope I'm not saying those too badly. He completed his degree in 1979 and graduated desiring to effect real change through his profession as a healer. Yet as he began his practice, he saw that the needs and determinants of health were far greater than those that he himself could address. He recognized the great intelligence of his patients, even those who had little or no formal education, and saw their desire to take care of themselves. This led him to the conviction that his practice of medicine must encompass not only primary care, but that he must find ways to spread knowledge of health practices to others. He went on to pursue a degree in public health from the National School of Public Health in Peru, and then completed a Master's of Science of Community Health for Developing Countries at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in 1989. Dr. Landa put this background into good use as he founded the Luke Society Clinic in Moyobamba in 1990. In the first 2 years, he led a mobilization of community health workers training 500 women in water safety, sanitation, hygiene, and treatment of dehydration in order to prevent cholera epidemic. The effectiveness of the campaign was proven when the area was reported to have the lowest incidence of cholera in the whole country. This is just one example of the many health initiatives implemented under Dr. Landa's supervision. Dr. Landa has been influential not only in the far reach of his successful public health programs, but also in his role as a mentor for other health workers. In his current position as Regional Coordinator for Luke Society, he identifies and advises directors for Luke Society clinics throughout South America, helping them bring about transformation by following the vision they have for holistic health in their communities. In his time at the clinic in Moyobamba, he served as the field supervisor for several hunger interns as well. Dr. Stanton Jones mentioned a few minutes ago that the first hunger interns were placed with Luke Society in 1990, and one of those interns, Michael Strait, interned with Dr. Landa in Peru. The fact that his internship extended into a long-term mentoring relationship with correspondence between Michael and his field supervisor for several years after the intern returned to the States speaks to the relational quality of Dr. Landa's life and work. It is the privilege of the Hunger Program to recognize and continue this relationship with Luke Society and Dr. Apolos Landa, and we look forward to what you have to share with us this evening. Please help me welcome Dr. Landa.
Good evening, everyone. It is a great privilege to be here tonight and to speak to you. On my way to this place, on the road to my colleagues, I was asking when I'm going to see a deer. And they didn't answer me. They said, but keep watching. Keep watching. And today I had the pleasure and the privilege of seeing one of the greatest real deers that have contributed to this country and to the development. And I'm proud of being part of that, witness of the organization that devotes a great part of their profit to this endeavor, to enabling vision, local vision that adding up could finally make possible a transcendental global change for good, for common good of everyone. Also, I want to anticipate that probably you have to deal with some not used English, not used accent, and I hope I can make it possible for you to understand the topics that I want to deal with. I don't know if you allow me to do this tonight, but I will ask you to pronounce with me these words. Try to follow me. Say it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech hai bekayam she'asani. The women say Isha. The men say Ish. What we have said? Blessed be you, O Lord, God of the King of the universe, our God, our Lord, and King of life, and the one who lives, for having made us, the women that I am, those who are women, the men that we are. So what we are going to deal tonight has to do somehow with this blessing, with recognizing what we are and what human being is all over the earth, image and likeness of God, having made by Him, so that from that identity derives all, not only the dignity, but also the privileges and rights and duties that has to do with it. And health has much to do with this reality, as we will see around. Just around the end of the year 2008, a CNN observer circulated an email, it's not really an official thing, on the financial rescue of the U.S. banking system with the citizens' money here. And he said, without counting the $500 billion already disbursed and the many more billions that the European governments had poured on their banks, just to grasp the immeasurable amount sum of $700 billion that is claimed further. I have divided that, he said, that amount into the 6.7 billion inhabitants of the world, obtaining the baffling sum of $100 million for each, disregarding age. That amount, he said, will immediately not only wipe out poverty in the world, but it will make millionaires to all their inhabitants. Therefore, it seems to me, he concludes, we have just a small distribution problem of enough riches in the world. I'm not quite sure, because apart from that, his arithmetic was not right, and at the beginning I was not aware of that as well. No? The question is it really only a matter of distribution? Is it really a matter of resources being handled for everyone, or knowledge alone? Or this is also the tip of an ethical iceberg, reflecting on the surface an underlying denial of values in relationship to human duty, justice, and dignity. Sometimes knowledge could be shared. Sometimes riches could be shared. But if the values are not there, and if the real dignity of human being is not taken into account, the same values, the same money, the same power of financial power, the same power of knowledge would really only serve to very mean purposes. I want to propose alongside this talk tonight that somehow health and human rights are closely related. And I want to propose that something that we already assume, but we need to reflect more and take it more deliberately into account, that for human beings to be taken into account and to be cared and served in health, if there is not in place, not only of the providers, but also of the receivers, the awareness of who we are, whom are we serving to, so proper service would not be delivered and proper development would not take place. In December, the 10th of December of 2008, marked also the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which laid the foundations for the right to the highest attainable standard of health. In order to enable local vision, it has to be stirred up and brought up to the surface. Among the grassroots of community and nations, the inmost legitimate value and universal common aspiration of those people. And in doing it, or in shaping that vision, that shared vision, the facilitators, whoever they are, that come to work with the communities, have somehow to renounce to take credit on it. Such common aspiration for common good will become a human right, hence the driving force for change and for fulfilling aspiration and transformation. So this night I would like to briefly sweep among some general concepts of health, some general concepts and trends of human rights, how they have related to each other, and how is that so, even that being amidst this discussion, the world still is struggling in tremendous problems of health that haven't been yet been addressed. And finally, I would like to show how the FBOs, the faith-based organizations, have been making tremendous contributions while the powers or the big agencies or policymakers are still on the debate and making tremendous results but not moving ahead. So the faith-based organizations like the Lux Society or programs like hunger programs or other like World Vision are making contributions in the world at the community level. Let's see some modern concepts and trends of health. Medicine and healthcare, although essential for human welfare, are not synonymous of health. The present concept of health derives from both medicine and public health. Medicine as having something to do with physical illness and disability, and public health as having more to do with how to be healthy and how to preserve such condition. The most widely used modern definition of health was developed by the World Health Organization, that is, health is a state of a complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Through this definition, WHO has helped to move the health thinking beyond a limited biomedical and pathological-based perspective to the more positive domain of wholeness and well-being. Also, by explicitly including the mental and social dimensions of wholeness and well-being, the WHO fundamentally expanded the scope of health and, by extension, the roles and responsibilities of health professionals and their relationship to the communities. But such definition echoes the aim of Christian endeavors that much long time before had been trying to be set in place. The Council of Health Education in China, for instance, founded in 1912 by a former Christian missionary, Dr. W. Peter, I couldn't find his name, who then proposed to promote health education among the people of the Republic of China by emphasizing all the aspects of health, physical, mental, social, and moral, to present to them an ideal of health that is not merely freedom from disease, but a realization of the highest physical, mental, and spiritual possibilities of the individual. Was reported in James C. McGilvray, book or article in Community Health in Heralds of Health, the Saga of Christian Medical Initiatives. So this McGilvray found that a Christian Medical Commission created in 1968 in Geneva and sponsored by the World Council of Churches was acknowledged and taken on board as a joint committee by the WHO in 1974 and helped to shape later on which were the strategies of Health for All for the year 2000, adopted by the WHO and the UNICEF at Alma-Ata in September 1978. This original approach to health was comprehensive and had its Christian origins and biblical perspective. The exchanging expertise and joint activities of these committees that have common grounds and share regions of activity help to pave that approach. However, such appealing definition, stand and leadership of the WHO attracted not Christian or religious-related people at that time, but primarily secular and non-confessional organizations interested in health in increasing numbers. But what are the modern concepts and trends of human rights? The evolving conceptual framework of human rights was also vibrant, hopeful, ambitious, and complex. In 1876, if I have right those dates, the Independence Declaration of the United States, I think that's around there, the Independence Declaration of the United States of America proclaimed that all people are born free and equal in dignity and rights. In the post-war, the promotion of all over the world of such recognition was the principal purpose of the United Nations at its foundation in 1945. Following, in 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted as a common standard for all the peoples. Human rights as well as human dignity were surfacing as self-evident and were seen as the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. Hence, individual and collective well-being is seen as determined by its promotion and observance. As a natural consequence, series of conventions were signed, some of which were legally binding for the state membership, but all of them had health warrant at the core and at the goal of their proposals. Among those conventions, we could just find the International Bill of Human Rights And in 1969, the Convention Against Racial and Religious Belief Discrimination. And in 1981, the Convention Against Women Discrimination. And in 1987, the Convention Against Torture, Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. And in 1988, the Convention on Child Rights. So, growing in this way, legitimacy and awareness of human rights concerns. The trend moves towards, when we look the trends of human rights at these days, the trend moves towards first focusing human rights on advocacy, on civil and political rights, and on expanding certain socioeconomic rights to include environmental concerns. Second trend is in generalizing social involvement and in human rights debates and demands, causing a growing command and language of use in human rights concepts. Later I will describe the case of the Ministry of the Lux Society in Guatemala with Axel, with those traditional bear attendants that have gained such a power in debating and being deliberate that really have conquered their grounds in policy making at the district level. So these kind of things are taking part in the trends of human rights. The third trend, perhaps, is in the realization that other societal institutions, apart from the states, but capable of eluding state control, may strongly influence the fulfillment or enforcement of a right, even to health. In Peru, we had some kind of problems like that. A mining corporation, I would not mention his name, but some Presbyterian mission organizations have been strongly campaigning against them, even from the United States, because in that population, they don't care about contaminating the atmosphere with plum, with asbestos, and all these other contaminants. And about 1 million of the population are already having higher standards of contamination in their blood. And just, for instance, they're just getting away with the profits and things without taking into account the right of these persons to live well as the right that they have to make profit. And fourth, most recently, in the recognition and response of both intergovernmental and non-governmental agencies to the fundamental interdependence of right promotion and rights protection rather than conflicting, being complementary to define and advance in human health and well-being. Besides, there seems to be a strong indication to be further researched that the promotion and protection of health are inextricably related to the promotion and protection of human rights and human dignity and vice versa. Let's see some links between health and human rights. When the WHO Constitution was drafted in 1946, and when the Declaration of Alma Ata was adopted in 1978, affirming the right to the highest attainable standard of health in a comprehensive manner, a few enlightened people understood the relationship between health and human rights. For health as a right to be claimed and enjoyed in full, there are some limited perspectives to be overcome first. And that is what Professor Amartya Sen points out when he lists some of those perspectives that need to be overcome to understand health as a human right. There are understandable reasons, he said, why the perspective of the right of health seems to many to be remote. First, he says, there's what we might call the legal question about human rights, health rights. How can health be a right since there's no binding legislation demanding just that in any place, anywhere in the world? Second, there is the feasibility question. How can the state of being in good health be a right when there's no way of ensuring that everyone does have good health? And third, there is the policy question, he says. Why think of health rather than health care as a right, since health care is under control of policy making, not the actual state of health of the people? And he is quite lucid and quite accurate in his questions. And as these questions have remained to be debated, health as a right to be fully enforced and fully enjoyed become postponed. Moreover, the rise of neoliberalism corrupted the comprehensive aims for health as a right on a global basis. A selective and vertical approach to health was turned into a mere part of a packaging of soothing measures to attenuate the social impact of economic adjustment. In most of the world, the whole health system shifted from a collective responsibility approach with solidarity to an entirely individualistic approach and concern. Most state administrations passed more and more of the duties of health care and service provision onto the private sector, showing evidence of increased inequality and loss of social protection, mostly in the developing countries. Vertical interventions, separated from efforts to change economic and social determinants for health, become more and more unethical, even immoral. When looking a bit crudely, let me tell you, at population policies, interventions seem to seek to reduce poverty, for instance, only by reducing the number of the impoverished, by means of family planning or fertility control programs. In most developing countries, like in Peru, starkly differing morbidity and mortality rates, coupled with high prevalence of avoidable illness and deaths, are reported in people who are poor, native or indigenous or marginal groups, those excluded from the system. Alongside this, services still have serious limitations in their awareness and in their respect for culture, citizenship, or equity in terms of race, age, and gender. When I was a medical intern in the highlands of the Quechua people in Ayacucho, I was shocked to see that even those colleagues that had been graduated and come from that background, and they have a great command of the Quechua language, when the Indian peasants came to the consulting room, they came looking down with the eyes through their eyebrows and holding their hat on their hands and stood by the door of the consulting room, looking hopelessly to the doctor there. And the voice of the doctor, rather than being tender and inviting us, "What do you have? What is your problem? Speak, speak." And rather than creating a climate of confidence and trust and a warm environment in which it could be taken care, it really made them to feel ostracized and really refuse to speak. And finally, they were dismissed without the problem being solved, receiving whatever prescription they don't need. And what a different thing was when someone seeing those patients coming along, they could use their language and say, "Hamui papayai tia kuliawai," in their own language. And you could see that the eyebrows that were frowned, their face radiated. They immediately felt into confidence and just immediately entered in the room and took seat and started to speak. Of course, the doctor couldn't follow through because that was the only words in Quechua that he knew. But that was enough to establish the rapport. And this is the kind of things that are still going all along when we think about the health of the people, when we think about the health of those dispossessed or underprivileged, and when we think that even their own people have really made themselves away and are not throwing their lot like Moses with those who are in the slavery or in the needing condition. These things highlight poverty, discrimination, and inequity as powerful determinants of ill health, thus pointing towards a link between human rights and health attainable goals. Obviously, damage to health is the primary manifestation of a human right abuse. The right to a suitable health, therefore, is a fundamental part of the human rights and of our view of life in dignity. In brief, without going in full detail, 3 ways I could summarize in which health and human rights relate. This is only to mention these things. I'm not going to linger too much on this. First, The impact, these were the questions, so I'm just saying, sorry. Let's go on. In 3 ways. First, the impact, positive or negative, of health policies, programs and practices in human rights. When public health started, it was to deal mostly with transmissible diseases like cholera, like TB, and sometimes vaccination was needed, and we enforced that regardless, and it was a bit coercive on those times. But nowadays, coercive approaches of public health can work detrimental to public health and to the human rights. So like approaches of prevention of HIV/AIDS and STD spread by coercive methods. We could just be exposing people to be discharged from their work or be mistreated in their own community if we don't take care of other issues that are related with human dignity, like their consent, or like not only the informal consent, but also like having proper counseling pre and post their tests. The second way in which you can see that health is related to human rights is the impact of violations of human rights on health. That is torture, violations of women, violent social suppression, but also upholding awareness of information regarding diseases like my colleague was mentioned before, Dr. Lehman, about suppressing information for people, information related to tobacco, information related health services, information related on how a prescription of medicine will affect our kids or the mothers, etc., 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 or the neglect of a just and favorable condition to work. They have shown to lead to severe and probably lifelong effects on physical, mental, and social well-being. Finally, the third way in which we find how health and human rights relates is that there are strong indications that the promotion and protection of human rights and promotion and protection of health have synergizing impacts on the overall community well-being, even more than the two previous relationships. So modern concepts of health recognize that human rights are among the underlying conditions which establish the foundations for realizing physical, mental, and social health and well-being. While we delayed in make that recognition, so the purpose of health for all got somehow cheated in our world. The lack of political will and the suspect of table-clothing communism or socialism gains by doing comprehensive approaches to development or to human rights led to little articulation between the promotion and protection of human rights as well as health, thus somehow undermining the effectiveness in the prevention and control of major health damages in an emerging epidemics. Strictly focusing how is the world today regarding to health and epidemics, we could just still point out the urgent needs, still screaming for response when there are more than 40 million people that are still infected with HIV and with an ongoing rate of AIDS deaths of about 3 million per annum. Oh, well, it's up there, 3 million per annum. More than 2.2 million young and adults are dying of tuberculosis. About 1 million of children are dying of malaria worldwide. 1.8 million child deaths occurred out of 5 billion cases of diarrhea. And this is only to speak of a few damages of health. At a time when wealth and technology are greater than all past history of humanity, there is no excuse for 1 billion still lacking safe water to drink and 2.6 billion lagging behind with no sanitation. Indeed, a good program of community health would really do it, but that's not taking place so far in many developing countries.
Local population in the developing countries are the most vulnerable, with the women and their children ranking at the bottom of health status scores in the pits of poverty and misery of the world. When the malnutrition of children and women in fertile age is still a grievous problem in developing countries, the media reports, the BBC, March 2007, reports that the system intends using vast agricultural resources to supply alternative fuel for cars and consumerist comforts rather than providing food for the chronic famine of the two-thirds of the world, thus reflecting not necessarily lack of food, which is plenty, but political inequity in the world. By the end of the 20th century, the rising tendency to bring the entire arena of public health under the market forces was also disastrous for the Western industrialized and affluent countries. As the false hope of the trickle-down benefit that a neoliberal economy and market deregulation could not longer be hidden, criticism of the failure to improve health grew in intensity, and the need for facing up to such a situation could no longer be postponed by the worldwide agencies. So the undeterred spread of fatal multiple pandemics, the persistence of vast areas of extreme poverty in many large regions, the famines, droughts, unattainable conditions of sanitation, and shortage of energy for millions in a more and more extremely unjust and unrighteous and merciless world system created such a momentum that global officials no longer remained indifferent. They called for a review of the situation in the Millennium Forum held by the United Nations in New York, and subsequently the heads of the states signed the Millennium Declaration. And really at this point, I just want to make the statements that I'm not blaming entirely into neoliberalism, because we have recently heard from Paul Orossi from Ukraine that the socialists also fell short so badly in addressing the needs of the people, because the problem is not there. The problem is not in ideology. The problem is not really in free market and neoliberalism. The problem is in seeing humans and humanity with value in themselves, with dignity in themselves, so that in any case we could have made better role to provide for the needs and the rights of the people regarding to health. So the Millennium Declaration and the forums call for a renewed stand for the health rights of the people. This is the most important attempt to sensitize global political and economic leadership to the fact that people are the real wealth of the nations. Its major aim for development is to create an enabling environment in which people can enjoy long, healthy, and creative lives. The unbearable conditions portrayed above that I have mentioned before should create a new global conscience on the decisive urgency that humanity now faces for survival and for attaining a suitable standard of life for everyone in the planet. And when we say a suitable standard, I have to thank my brother Greg Kuiper making me notice so many times the World Health Organization Declaration of Right as the highest attainable right for anyone else seems impossible to achieve. But as any kind of utopical thing that we pursue, we have to put that way, otherwise we never do anything else. But the most proper term will be a suitable one. And that's what we want to tackle with community health development. That is, to agree in every condition of life what is going to be the major satisfactors in health, the major satisfactors in the economics, the major satisfactors in any other areas of what makes life comfortable for people. We have a colleague in India, in Yamke, Dr. Raj and Madel Arole. They have really built a comprehensive program of health in that area. And when you go and see there, You see that there's still poverty there, but you see children that are really well-fed, children and girls that are well-educated. And so probably they don't have the whole comfort that we have in developed countries. But they are happy. They have the agriculture. And he said, well, many have criticized it to me by talking about suitable development, that I'm making these people be tamed and comforted with this kind and level of development. And he says, but I don't buy in the other kind of development of the other nations. Some friends of Europe or Switzerland or United States come, or Canada, and come and say, why do you leave these people like that? Well, they have nice housing there. It's not be like your house perhaps in Canada or Ontario, no? But they have a house with basic sanitation and cleanliness. They have food provision ensured, and they have education ensured. They have all the occupational activities going around, and they find themselves, they have agreed together that that is their dream, that is their vision, and these are the satisfactors, and they are going to go well along with that. And so this is the kind of thing that we are thinking about, suitable standards of health. The right to the highest standard, the highest attainable standard of health, would then encompass medical care. Medical care, suitable access to safe drinking water, adequate sanitation, education, health-related information that we've been mentioned already, and other underlying determinants of health, which includes freedoms such as the right to be free from discrimination and involuntarily medical treatment, and entitlements such as the right to essential primary health care. Like other human rights, the right to health has particular concern for disadvantaged people and populations who are already living in poverty and require an effective, responsive, integrated health system of good quality which is accessible to all. The right to health is a fundamental part of human rights and of our understanding of a life in dignity, as well as to the development of communities and societies, being central to the creation of equitable health systems. Let me refer briefly to the role of faith-based organizations in the development of better standards of health as a right for humans. Long before the Millennium Forums and the Millennium Forum set objectives, and beyond their great resolves in the highest global spheres, the faith-based organizations like Luke Society, like MAP International, like Emmanuel Hospital, and others, have become the champions in addressing health problems from a worldview that values dignity and fundamental rights of the human person. Faith-based organization is the label for a wide range of entities that, motivated by their faith persuasion, mostly Christians, are widely involved in development programs for disadvantaged people and nations. Much of their programs are concerned with health. After the consultation on transformation, the Church, in response to human needs that took place here in Wheaton precisely in 1983, a rise in Christian consciousness materialized a renewed mission movement. Hundreds of Christian faith-based organizations are now engaged in God's work everywhere, intending to make the practice of transforming mission a reality. They might not be labeled missionaries from the classic missiology menu, but they are engaged in holistic mission as a proclamation that demonstrates the gospel in participatory transforming initiatives elsewhere. It has also been reported that more than 250 evangelical relief, health, development, and justice agencies linked today in what's called the MICA network. A vast array of faith-based organizations committed to advocate justice and equity in all spheres of life, including health, and to call for a new global order. According to an important study released by the WHO in 2007, about between 30 to 70% of health work resources and infrastructure belongs to FBOs and the churches, and the positive impact to bar AIDS have become undeniable, especially in Africa. Christian initiatives rediscovered a holistic view of people that includes the spiritual dimension of life in a context of justice and equity. An outstanding example of this is the comprehensive rural health program that I have already mentioned of Dr. Arole. Dr. David Morley, Daniel Fountain in Africa, and Dr. Peter Bollens in the Mississippi Delta pioneered and publicized also this approach. Community participation was to facilitate mutual learning, to move people from I am right or I don't need you to we can learn from each other and let us do it together. Dr. Peter Bollens, the founder of the Lux Society, insists, I will open the quotation, that the goal of this commitment is enabling, empowering from the grassroots level, no matter how depressed a poor community is. People exist in there with talent and abilities. Many of the poor in these communities have never had the opportunity to develop. Finding them is like finding gems, he said. The success of any programs ministering to the poor depends on shaping and polishing these gems so that their God-given gifts are evident to all to see and to all to benefit from. Empowering, involving, sharing ownership in planning and in shaping the dream and the vision will begin to bring out of the community the unedited aspirations that they have, the dreams and the visions for the future that they have, rather than merely asking, what is your problem and what do you need, or what do you want, that immediately pose us as someone that is going to bring these solutions to them. Name it, here we are. It is rather the gently asking of Jesus, do you want to be whole? Setting in them the question, there's still a desire in you, there's still an aspiration in you, like saying to them, is there still any aspiration, or how would you like to see your own children, to see your own women, to see your own community in X years ahead? And then, after setting what is the vision, together start to set what are the obstacles, what are the difficulties, what are the problems, and together start to make the tree of problems to see which of those problems lie at the roots, which at the trunk, and which are perhaps irrelevant. Community and church-based successful health development programs started by crediting the potential of local believers to learn further and take action for change. Asserting the improved knowledge, illiterate villagers, especially women, were well able to incorporate new skills, and as they learned, they were keen to teach and pass on to others what they have learned. Some examples I would refer to you. This has characterized in Latin America Lux Society, which I am most familiar with in the programs. Yenny's Children and Women Banks, for instance, in Ecuador. Yenny is a doctor. She has been working as a consultant and sometimes as a full employee of UNICEF. But then, because her husband had a kind of plantation of palm oil trees down the Esmeralda area, the Afro-Ecuadorians where they live, she had to pass through many miserable villages to meet her husband and meet her children or pass a weekend. And she could no longer bear seeing a lot of rubbish all around. And she decided to work for them. And she came and finally gathered many of the women of one of the nearby communities and the women and the leadership and just, let me ask you a question, asked them. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that I'm a doctor, I'm a physician, and I really want to next year change my car and change the curtains of my house and maybe repaint my house. And I'd like you to help me to do so. People in that poverty area were taken aback by that kind of thing, that kind of proposal. How could they ever help this doctor? Yes, you could help me. How? Well, by just keeping keeping sick, so I could keep prescribing you, I kept keeping money out of your problem, I could keep recycling your disease, and I be keeping rich, and I will change my car in no time. Boy, the people really reacted immediately to that. Well, she said, that is what is happening. Not that it's wrong to treat your diseases, not that it's wrong to provide health care, but if we don't go together with you to what are the determinants that keep you ill and keep you sick from things that you could take care by yourselves, you're only making me rich, and you're not getting any further healthier. And so she started immediately to strategize with themselves about how to do that. And the next time I approached her was, well, Apolos, what's your proposal, Jenny, for changing this situation? Well, I want a women bank. Women bank? We are not business people. We are doctors. Well, I know. Have you seen the rubbish all around? Yes, I saw the rubbish all around. So I want the Lux Society to provide some funds from some loans to improve some production of passion fruit here. But let's make passion fruit a kind of compost-produced, natural, how do you call that? There's a name for that. I cannot remember the technical name of this produce that are done without fertilizers and things like that. Organic. And that is a good price. And all of them, all these women have bought into the idea, but they needed a loan. And so this is the best way I have to take away rubbish out of the backyards and the front yards. And truly, yes, she put an economic value to the rubbish. And soon afterwards, rubbish was taken care in some worms that produce humus and things like that. And she was doing her job. And while we're coming week by week to see the loans, how we're giving back, she was teaching them parenting. She was teaching them about healthcare issues. Otherwise, they would never come to their meetings because they were tired of those talks on health and talks on this and talks on that, but now they were renewed interest. And this is the thing. This is the story of, just to say, Jenny, children and women's banks, how they made a change in those communities because they started to depart from what the people need, from what the people perceive as the most important things, and are related that you're treating them with dignity, you're hearing what they think, you're just making them valuable, you're making them to think on themselves as valuable people and that deserve to be heard. Then Axel's deliver TBS. I have already mentioned, I'll not go longer on that, but she has banded with these traditional bird attendants all around. All of them are caciquel. They not even command the Spanish language in the plateaus of Guatemala. But he has banded all together with them and has taught about health care and about antenatal care and about risk factors of pregnancy and things like that. And then because the health ministry has already a policy to do with that, he started to engage with the health ministry, and the health ministry wanted to have otherwise, but they fought their grounds. They went to the streets with their pans and their casserolas making noises and things like that, and they fought their rights to be taking part as the health system. And now they are part of the health system, and they deliberate together about the policies, about how to deliver vaccination for women, about tetanus, and how to make a better referral system for them, and how they would have to be received when they are referred by the traditional birth attendant in the healthcare system. And so I could go on with Berta's abandoned children in the outskirts of Trujillo. Berta and Felix, she is a pharmacist and he is a doctor. And so they started to work in places where the displaced people by the guerrilla, the Shiny Path guerrilla and the MRTA guerrilla were working. But when those people were displaced there, nobody took care of them. And later there was an earthquake and the Niño phenomena, and a lot of people were without houses, and the housing scheme started to move towards that region. And the programs of the government were concentrating in the new people that have lost their property, but nobody was taking care of those other that have been poor for so long there. And many of them were in prostitution, many of them were in gangs, and they started to adopt these kids. And believe me, 3 weeks ago, it's a bit more, I'm just talking not 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, I was in Trujillo, and so they used to hold early prayer meetings, 4 o'clock in the morning. So Think about that. And so I went there without telling them that I'm going, and just popped there in the prayer meeting. And they were singing so wonderfully and praying to the Lord and preparing for the day. Among the different age people that were there, there were youngsters, handsome ones, and there were pretty young girls among them praying and singing. And after the meeting, Berta tells me, "Do you don't know that people? Because this is a ministry 10 years old." "I don't know, Berta, who they are." "These are the girls that were 8 years old, 9 years old up there, whose mothers were in prostitution, whose parents were guerrilla people, and they have died or have been murdered. And those are here. She is already going to be a chemistry pharmacist. This one is going to be a lawyer. This one is oh boy, my heart really almost broke. This is the change. This is the transformation that starts by providing health, but also looking at other needs of the people. And so, high-mix community mothers and child welfare homes in Cali, where the biggest cartel of drug abusers are, in Cali, Colombia, in Corinto. And then Jorge's maternal mortality and morbidity sharp droppings in Paraguay, a nice place for interns of hunger problem that could be there next time to consider. However, the same could be said of other unique problems in Ghana, Africa, and in Munkachi that we have here in Hungary, in China, Pakistan, and Irian Jaya, where the Lux Society is working because the same philosophy is there. Let me close by addressing some challenges that these things may bring about. The challenges that I will bring to you for this night are, no matter how exciting is what is happening at the local levels, that vision, worldview, and lobby motivation needs to add up to become global. For this, let me attempt to list some challenges that we face so that may take place. First, to bridge human rights into public health and into public minds and public health laws, not only into the policy makers and decision makers, but also among the people. People have to be informed about their rights. Second, to explore better the substantial, conceptual, and practical implication of health and human rights synergism. In fact, there's only indications, strong indication to make hypotheses about this. But I believe that hunger programs are the good ones, the best ones, to help us to research on these grounds and really make this demonstrable and documented. And then apply medical, social sciences, and public health methods to identify and assess the effects of physical, mental, and social well-being to establish valid associations between human rights and health impacts. Document the health right impacts of human rights violations so as to increase the awareness of the importance of human rights promotion and protection for health and well-being. And fifth, reorientate thinking towards major global health challenges, which are still remain: neonatal and infant mortality reduction, increase of health child development, because it's not only a matter to let them survive. At a time in Lux Society in Moyobamba, we were so happy, jumping and celebrating. Wow, zero mortality from diarrhea. Wow, zero mortality from pneumonia. Wow, a drop from 36% of the malnutrition percentile to only 17. Wow. But then all of a sudden we turned around and say, yes, now they live. But what for? What for? So what little gain is to make them live, but what for? And that is it. Increase the healthy child development, environmental and industrial hygiene, preventing, treating, and controlling epidemics, endemics, and occupational diseases, and universal health insurance coverage. Prioritize the need of good quality of health services that should reach people in the most poor and most excluded communities, like in Transcarpathia. Conclusions. We can conclude that to enable local vision in order to bring about comprehensive health and transformation for the local and global community, we need a right-based sorry, I'm going backwards. Sorry. We need a right-based approach to a comprehensive health development and transformation of a community, which should take into account principles of inclusion, participation, fulfillment of obligation or duty, and tackle the underlying causes of poverty, disadvantage, and ill health, and work in partnership to address these causes. And partnership and community participation for us does not mean only that the community put the labor or the community put a share into the economics. It's also participation and partnership in the dream and in the conception of the projects and in reviewing together the problems and seeing the relevancy of them together. And then substantial and sustainable transformation will only be achieved if people who are poor have greater involvement in shaping health policies, practices, programs, and ensuring that what is agreed happens. That is, that they also fight, not with violence, but negotiation, advocacy, and lobbying for their own rights so that they could ensure that what was agreed with the authorities take place and happens. Improvement in health of communities who are poor and marginalized in countries with high inequity will not be achieved by technical interventions alone, and mere redistribution of riches, resources, and services would not bring alone well-being. Alliance of people in the communities with health providers, civil society networks, and policymakers are of key importance for both health system performance and its outcome and its diffusing social conflicts, like what is happening with Look Society and Hunger Program and other organizations. Faith-based organizations should participate in forums, public dialogues, and public influencing spaces that in time will reflect in passing and supporting laws that favor health promotion and care as a health right. That will also work as an accountability mechanism. In working with right holders and duty bearers, faith-based organizations like the Look Society or the Hunger Programs or any other will tackle unjust power relationships and discrimination for the health and development of impoverished communities. The ultimate underlying basis of our argumentation this night and for the above conclusion summarily lies in the fact that humanity has been created in God's image, and as such, human beings are the climax of God's creation. That is why the restoration and care of humanity is bound to restore and care for the whole created order. Being therefore God's offsprings, says Paul, Adam and Eve, as well as their seed, we ourselves, we are intended to exist and act as God's representatives and stewards. Human duty comprises healing, sustaining, caring, and keeping, making humanity and the rest of creation prosperous and fruitful, full of life and common wellness, with all standing under their supreme authority, rule, and judgment. If what has been said above is the character of the mission of any individual or God-fearer and of a FBO from the beginning to the end, then the role to play is to call and bring people into a community that foretastes the future wholeness and healing that God will bring about in the full coming of His kingdom. It is starting from the local community to articulate in anticipation of the kingdom the creation of conditions for health and wholeness until the day when His people's mission endeavors will be met with God Himself crowning their efforts. Therefore, comprehensive community health looks back to what was intended in creation, to what was required in the covenant of God, and to what was portrayed and commanded by Jesus, and mission looks forward to what is in store for the future. However, my friends, if the vision of the kingdom of God is that of a creation brought to wholeness and a society in which the values of justice, peace and joy in relationship prevail, an uncomfortable question still remains. Kenneth Luscombe said, may we talk of health, healing, and wholeness with any meaning while we as members of the human community allow 15 million of our children under the age of 5 to die each year because of lack of food, clean water, basic sanitation, or medicines, or safe housing? Today, there are not 15 million because that was said in 1991. Today, the numbers are about 5 million, but 5 million are still really a toll that we should not tolerate. Comprehensive health and the transformation of communities is, in fact, a matter of dignity, justice, and love, both within the local and the global community. Other world is possible and is called for. Thank you very much.
May I ask Paul and John if he's here? John, I don't see you. Where are you? John, yes, come on. We have probably a half an hour or so. If people have questions, we would like to entertain those questions. As you're going, some of you have to leave tonight. Please remember, tomorrow morning we have 2 sessions, beginning here at, if I can find it, at 10 o'clock from 10 to noon, our 2 final sessions tomorrow morning. Apolos, thank you for just a wonderful and very, very challenging talk tonight on global health and not only the challenges, but the vision of the kingdom of God in all of this. We have 3 wonderful men who have shared with us from their hearts today. I invite questions from any of you there. A lot to think about.
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Arasi. And the question has to do with God's provision for you, separating from the state-funded health care. Didn't share, I guess, there might be stories, but how God's provided for the Christian medical clinic that you described. He's obviously done a really neat work. It was exciting to hear about. I'm just curious to hear more about, it sounds like you're offering very inexpensive health care, and I'm just curious how you're doing it.
Thank you. It was a challenge to leave from a safe position to come to the Christian Medical Center. But I must to say the first was my colleague. He was chief of the staff in the local clinic. And when we started with the medical center, he came to me one morning and he said that I prayed and the Lord showed me that I will be the first. And he gave up his job and came from a safe position to an unsafe place to serve poor people, to serve a Christian in a Christian medical center. However, even he did not know anything about his salary at that time. So I think that is what I mentioned in my presentation to it. The first motivation was in our work to share our faith with our patients. And that was possible much more in this environment, in this new environment, in the Christian Medical Center as in the state healthcare system. Looking back, I can tell that all of us are satisfied because Lord blessed our work.
Dr. Arosi and Dr. Landa, you both articulated views on community healthcare, and you both talked a little bit about the political situations and the way that governments and healthcare have interacted in your very different contexts. What would you each say, and all three of you could answer this actually, what would you say the optimal role for government is in providing healthcare?
Well, we may think that the state is a good administrator and it's not. But also could be a fallacy to deny entirely the state of fulfilling a role in that area. And I think the state is mostly in the structural part of the health problem, providing policies and guidelines that have been somehow designed from a technical point of view. But in the implementation of those policies and guidelines, surely have to be a great convention, a negotiation at different levels. So if the government does that or provides for that, so that the policies would be checked and moderated or modulated according to its reality, is really enabling greatly. So the role of the state should be in this, the one that sets up some rules, not all the rules, but the basic ones, and then provides and opens up for greater dialogue in the community at different levels, and let that take place afterwards and facilitate the resources and distribution. And there are some areas in which the state fulfills a tremendous role in provision of services, especially in health insurance, but there are others in which the private sector does it better.
I mentioned in my presentation that we have a TB problems in the country. From the state, in the region, we have a mobile X-ray to check the population, but they never could arrange a good screening in the gypsy camps. But in our two gypsy camps, we have, cooperating with the state healthcare, almost 100% check people. So they have resources sometimes, but they could not organize this work. And only one nurse in the community, only one people could help in two camps, checked all the population. So we had, after that, promise from the healthcare that they will cooperate with us. And the next year, in that time when we want, they will send this mobile clinic again. So the resources itself, that's not enough sometimes. So need to organize this work. And these people, these gypsies, trust this nurse. She lives among them, and that helps a lot.
Let me add another thing, perhaps, if I can, is that sometimes the state, because many of the health policies are policies that are somehow put in place by worldwide bodies like WHO and others that through their research and many other consultancies, they have found that they will be applicable in general terms. Most of the states apply that. And even in the states, there are good consultants that they really make great policies and great programs. But they themselves are not good implementers. They lack of motivation, the lack of commitment sometimes. And so good programs and good interventions sometimes fail because of the people who had no motivation. In those cases, when the state agency, the state role is somehow neglected by lack of motivation. The FBOs really contribute tremendously. I have seen some FBOs, some faith-based organizations like the Luke Society, just to take those same programs that they have done, apply to the particular context and rural area that has happened in Africa, that has happened in Latin America, Central America, and make it successful. But in doing that, do not neglect the health, because the role corresponds to them, so to speak. No? The role of leading corresponds to the health sector. Bring them together. Usually at the beginning they come reluctantly to do that, because they know that they have to do that. But then when the things start to happen, then when success is becoming something to be praised for, and then the higher levels of the government come to praise the region for that, they like to be there. No? They like to be there. And that is the time when you pass on the hat. You have helped them to unfold the programs. You have sided with them in doing that, and you have shared with them the success and the happiness of having such a success. And then they already have tasted that, and they do continue. And you move into another ground of health that might be neglected, in which you continue doing that. I have seen that attitude being successful, being partners rather than competing or just blaming or criticizing the government.
In addition to the policies and the regulations that the government control, there is also the actual training of doctors, nurses, which are under the care of the government. And the government has to improve infrastructure, improve the salaries of professors, doctors. It depends from country to country. Some countries in Africa, like Ghana, health insurance is nearly 90% across the nation. But health institutions use their own resource to see patients. The reimbursement by the government is a problem. So the government has a role in reimbursing. Even in the U.S., I think doctors have problems in the reimbursement by the insurance companies and the like. So it varies from country to country. The production of doctors, health workers, their salaries, infrastructure, and even the payment of the services depend on the government. And at times it's difficult to influence, and that is where lapses occur and the healthcare system run down.
Thank you for your presentations. Dr. Landa, you mentioned the Millennium Objective to create an enabling environment in which people can enjoy long, healthy, and creative lives. And I'm intrigued by this idea of living a creative life. I was wondering, as we're talking about holistic healthcare, what role for the creative arts, the arts and music, you might envision in your health practices?
That's a wonderful question. Really, I like a verse in Isaiah. I was trying to find out that it speaks about the forthcoming of the kingdom when the Messiah comes, and so things will happen that among those things that happen, justice and peace will kiss each other, and then these kind of things that bring comfort and well-being will embrace. And so I think that is telling quite a lot, that health in the Bible really is shalom. No? It's a total harmony and well-being, harmony in all spheres of relationships. It's not only in the economics, it's also in the relationship, in the spiritual, it's also in the affections that we share each other. It is in every sphere of life, even in the arts. And precisely because human beings have been made at the image and likeness of God, then arts are part, and science are part of things in which human beings have to be remade. Because our Lord, our Maker, is the greatest artist of all. You look around for painting, you look around for colors, you look around for music, you look around for harmony, and there's it. So Maybe that's why Paul calls us, be imitators of your Creator, be imitators of your God, as loved children. So, and then maybe that's why the Messiah in chapter 17 of John says, no, this is eternal life, this is eternal well-being, this is eternal salvation, that we may know God. Because in knowing God, I am really coming to terms of what I am, no, in multidisciplinary terms. And probably the first experience not only is the awesome contemplation of this being, but at the same time the realization painfully how far I am from being what I should be as an artist, as a lawyer, as a teacher, as a doctor, as anyone else. And from the deepest of my heart, I could call unto that God and ask him, make me again out of yourself. And when every human being starts to reflect the glory of his Creator, is when the glory of God will fill the earth as the waters fill the sea.
Another aspect of the arts and the media is advocacy on justice, on issues that will bring policy change in the governments. Another area is also education, AIDS awareness, and behavioral change. A lot of them have come through the arts and the media.
Gene.
Thank you for this presentation this evening, and I hope that we here in America get to understand that health is a human right and not just an individual privilege. And thank you for that message, so timely, so needed. I'd like to direct my question to Dr. Robinson and perhaps the other panel members as well. Thinking about our hunger program here that has had such a strategic role in developing men and women to think seriously and participate in NGOs and FBOs across the globe, and but this the previous question about politics is one that intrigues me, because there's always this dance that goes on between the governments and the NGOs and the FBOs, and it is it's a different dance no matter where you are, but it is a dance, and you have to play it some way or another. So I'm wondering about our program here in Human Needs and Global Resources, and how much we really engage in the political side of this, and can we think more broadly about our affiliations and associations. And we can't escape the politics, as Gustavo Gutierrez bien dijo, toda la vida es política. All of life is political, although I wouldn't quite frame it the way he does. But so what do we do for our community, and as we send people out to think about the politics of it all?
I think for me the answer has a number of different dimensions, Gene. I think one of the things that we want to do right from the very beginning of our teaching here is to give students an understanding and awareness of the challenges that are being faced worldwide, including those of human rights, including all that has been spoken of this afternoon. I don't know that we can participate in advocacy unless we understand what the issues are. So I think there's a commitment to understanding intellectually what the challenges are, and then understanding what our response is. And I think our response is at two levels. One, we're citizens of an earthly kingdom, of a nation. What are our rights and our privileges, particularly in a place like this, where we can influence and shape the decisions that are made, the policies that our government makes. And I think the second thing is to realize that we are citizens of heavenly kingdom, which intersects and is a part. It's near, it's here, it's among us. To recognize that our response goes beyond. It also includes, but also goes beyond what we do in terms of our response politically. But I think that one of the things that we try to do in the Hunger Program, beginning with Third World Issues, is to point students to ways that they can advocate. The Christian faith-based organizations that, with a distinctly Christ-centered approach, are addressing the issues of hunger and exclusion, both domestically and internationally. Organizations such as Bread for the World, which has been outside all day, which develop very, very careful and well-researched understandings of the issues that are facing our country in the legislative agenda and that kind of thing. So I think that we engage in that as people of faith, as Christians, as church denominations, as in whatever context that we have. So I think it's recognizing that. I think also that we're equipping students for those kinds of vocations. I think of students we have probably as many hunger alumni in Washington, D.C. as anywhere in the world, who are involved in all kinds of aspects, both in public policy and in governance and in the private sector. But I think in all that we do, and all that we teach, and all that we model, and all that we mentor, that our focus is on recognizing our dual mandate, as it were.
At times, despite the fact that we are small an organization and we have a special niche and role that we are playing, if we continue doing it very well, continue polishing it and looking unto the Lord, one day we will turn the tide.
I've also become increasingly convinced that our particular role as people of God's kingdom is to show the way in our life and our actions and our commitments to a kingdom that is greater than any that that we're a part of here on earth. And I think one of the challenges for all of us, no matter who we are, is where does our true identity lie? Where is our true loyalty? To what values are we ultimately loyal? And often that demands of us positions that put us in opposition to our predominant culture and to our other identities. And we need to learn to be faithful. If we truly believe the premise of our faith, we believe that we understand that faith to be rooted in God's justice, in God's mercy, in God's compassion, in God's demand that we live justly in all our ways. And so I think that's going to take us in positions where we have to live distinctively as Christians. And I hope that's one of the things that we try to model.
I have a question that relates to the Alma Ata Declaration and this desire to see health care access for all. And I think there's a very important opportunity we have for influencing healthcare systems in developing nations. And what I see in Guatemala is that there are basically two forces that are trying to influence policy. There are the socialists who believe that the government should provide all healthcare services free of charge, although they're paid for somehow, taxes or however. And the other system that comes from the United States and says that it should all be fee for service and that the government should simply play a secondary role and maybe pay for child wellness programs and for the very poor and the elderly. We have, I think, an opportunity to come up with a system that's better and unique. The Guatemalan government is never going to be able to pay for health care for all the people in the country. There's no way that will ever be achieved. So a social system to provide that is never going to happen. And yet, there's not enough private enterprise to provide all services either. In your opinions, do we have a place at the table to try to influence policy, healthcare policy, in the countries in which we serve? And have you been thinking and giving thought to what might be an ideal situation? A combination of government, FBOs, all working together to make this happen, because it's not going to happen by just one organization doing it by themselves.
that's a good question. I mentioned during many years the physicians and also Christian physicians discussing about it because our country is just in the beginning of the reforms. Which direction would be maybe really the best for this country? Very shortly, my opinion is that there should be some combination of this. The insurance system will not solve everything. And we know very well the countries where the insurance system exists for a long time, but they have also some problems. And the other side, just to wait from the government, and the government must to cover all the expenses and do not do nothing. That is also not the right way. So, because the society is everywhere in our country, especially, is very different. We have, I mentioned, gypsies. It's a special with special social problems, and this population is in different regions very large. We have also very rich people became very rich during 15, 20 years. The healthcare system should be also different, a combination of different kind of healthcare system. But my opinion, the community health will find a place in this system too. It is needed, and as a Christian founded organizations, we can see in Africa, in Latin America, and also it's coming up in our countries. Many people coming to these healthcare institutions, not just to receive physical help, good level of healthcare diagnosis or treatment, but also because they are looking for something more.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. The level of influence upon the government or policymakers, there are several critical factors. One is the extent of influence, or how powerful are the faith-based organization, the leadership carry within that country. For example, in Ghana, 35% of the health service is taken over by the church. And the Catholic Church, they are very powerful. And certain issues, they can change it to affect the whole country, the health system. For example, determinant of tariff for the health insurance. Then also the other factor is the level of the policy to be changed. Is it national, regional, or local? And then the other factor is the extent of services that the faith-based organization provide, the coverage. Is it 50%, 100%? If it's just only a small, tiny percentage, they might not be able to influence that much. But when they have a larger share involving regional and with very powerful leadership, they are able to affect change at the national level.
Certainly, neither a socialist, neither the far right bear the grounds of guaranteeing that this is going to happen. You could see that there are countries that have a kind of socialist approach to health. Great Britain, for instance, there's quite a social health system that provides for everything. But you can see that this is kind of the ideal model, but it's taken badly advantage of by the public, because the public keeps smoking, so to speak, and the government has to pay for that carelessness, or maybe running risks that they shouldn't, just by the behavior of the population. And because of that, using resources to cover them due to the insurance system, resources that could be devoted for others that perhaps better need that resource. So with that, I want to tell you that we need to work on the grounds of alliances, both at the policy making and decision making level, and then at the grassroots level of civil and faith community, creating programs and awareness with them. And perhaps this ground is the first one that has to receive priority, because when a model of intervention is becoming successful, then you receive attention of the policy makers and those who are the decision makers, and they call you into board. And that has been happening. That is why right now, and the WHO has called to a consultation to relaunch primary health care, because primary health care in the comprehensive way that was intended at the beginning was distorted to a selective approach of just let people not die only, but not change the determinants of poverty and making people prone to sickness and disease. And just because that was suspected of being communist or being left-wing, and of course the left-wing and the communist system was really waiting for that, to take advantage of this for controlling the society. Well, we were really in a bad situation to play what is right to play. But now perhaps it's the better situation now. Neither the state alone, neither the FBOs alone. We have to ally together and strategically think to change mentality and change attitudes, so that no one takes advantage in an abusive way of the health system provided, even in a country like the United States. You have here all the means. Everything seems to be privatized, but still the state hospital has to play a tremendous role for so many that are indigent people, and then also the charity hospitals. The same in England. The charity hospitals and the charities in England had to really to deal with these people that really don't want to change and still are a burden for the health system. So human nature needs to be dealt with.
But the fact is, somebody has to pay. There is no...
That's true.
And somebody, there must be a cost bearing somewhere, sure. Either by charity, by government, by private, or whatever it is. There should be some payment.
Grace, you have the last question of the evening.
Speaking as a nurse, and you all are medical professions, nursing came out of the church. We were deaconesses in Kaiserwerth, Germany. And I just have heard of faith-based organizations, and I've heard of the government doing things, but I haven't heard too much from any of you about the role of the church. And I know, John, you have planted many churches as part of your health work. How do you see the church's role in health?
The role of the church all over the years, they have their primary spiritual role. Schools, hospitals, orphanages, any other came as a result of social action. Depending on the endowment of the church, the level of the leadership commitment, social action, the involvement varies. For example, the Catholic Church as years go, they really went in for the social action all over the years, and there are Catholic hospitals, Catholic schools, and the like. But with the other churches, especially of late the Pentecostals and the Charismatics, the spiritual focus far outweigh the social responsibility, until some of the deacons and the leadership really are called to the fact that they need this also. When the attention is not drawn, they are not doing that. That is why we have various degrees of social action and responsibilities by various churches. Salvation Army, because their leadership really was in for social action, they have a lot of hospitals and schools and the like. So it varies depending on the leadership, depending on the setup, and some also on the endowment. Their commitment in terms of finances to health and education.
When I was doing a review, I found out that there were, yes, nurses that made great contributors to health development, and even in mission, they were the pioneers going far away, the regions that others didn't dare not to go. And then in community health, we as health professionals, doctors, we tend to try to replicate little doctors in the community and prepare them to deal with disease, like taking care or curing only, but not to prevent. And usually we tend to train male health promoters. But then we found out that in the community, the male have other roles. They, no matter how well they train it, they like to be trained. They wanted to be 3 months away from their homes and their village to be trained. But they went there, and then soon they were involved in the business and the representations and all the negotiations, and never they were there when the mother was ill or when the child was ill, and sometimes couldn't really address problems of health of women because any other gender problems that would arise in the community. So from that, we ended up learning our lesson, and we started to train women for that, although it was very difficult at the beginning because the most busy person in the household. And so we just trained for them 2 days every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, only on one subject. And in 3 years or 4 years, we ended up a complete series of things, of subjects of health. Really, they responded so well. And it has been mentioned in the introduction, 500 women were, because of that experience, trained to prevent cholera spread in the region of San Martin. And they really achieved quite a tremendous goal. They were able to communicate with other women. They were able to enforce that in their own children. And they were really great implementers of the measures that we used as an intervention. So women are a tremendous role. And usually men in the church could be policymakers or enforcers, but not implementers. The implementers are women in the church. And so if we really get involved in the church and convince their husbands that they like to be in, well, they themselves will like to be in later on, because they will say, why these women get great fun there? We want to be there. And so this is an experience that we had in Latin America of involving women in health.
We'd like to bring this to a close, and just to thank our participants, Paul and Apolos and John and Karen, who's somewhere in the audience here. Thank you very much for being with us today. We have really appreciated learning from you. Let's give them a hand, please.
You're watching WETN, a service of Wheaton College. For information on our programs, call 630-752-5061 or email wetn@wheaton.edu. A video program guide is available at wetn.org.